Here we are once again, John from Houston's Ford, working on our Dodge County Metal Craft Fair projects. We are making Serbian knives, and we are making them from an old buzzsaw wheel. So we've got them all cut out, and the last time we were together, I've got them cut out. We cut out handles, we put handles on, and I left one all glued. I set this table up so that I can show you some of the things. If you want to try this, I would advise you to have yourself a belt sander, a random orbital sander. I like the kind of sander that has the tip. Some people call it a mouse. This is an air type sander. If you have air compressor you can work with, and that allows you to have drum type fittings that go into it. And of course, everybody's favorite, the Dremel tool with various burr tips. So that said, this is the brass. I put this out, and this is what our pin material is. This you can order anywhere online. I like to use 5/16 brass. That, of course, goes through the holes for what we like to call a mechanical fit on the handles or scales, like they call them on TV. So I went to some trouble, and I've organized these knives in a position where some are partway done, some are done, some are in work. So that said, we're going to get set up, and we're going to go right to work on working on knife handles. All right, so we're taking the clamps off of this Serbian knife. This has got black walnut handles. So we have the pins in place, and this is the last clamp. And what we have on here is a 3-hour epoxy. I know that's not how they do it on the TV show, but this ain't the TV show. This is real. So there we have it. You can see the pin sticking out. First thing we're going to do, we're going to go into our vise right away. I'll go this way. Now this knife has been sanded smooth and prepared, but it has not been sharpened. It's been brought down, so we go right to a simple thing, hacksaw. If you prefer, I suppose you could use a Dremel tool or some kind of power tool if you have. Doesn't matter. The end result is the same. Brass cuts really easy, right through that. There's 2. There's 3. And then we'll change angle a little bit. Just like that. Now, what we're going to do right away is, I'm going to set this up nice and level, and we're going to go to roughing this in. So what I like to do is, we talked about the last time we were filming using a flap disc. This is a hard disc. We're going to take that off, and we're going to go to a flap disc. I'm going to try this one right here on an electric grinder, and this goes very fast. So one more thing I've set up is I have a rag and I have a pail of water. So while I'm working on this, you're going to frequently see me taking the rag and wiping down on the wood, particularly on the brass pins, because as you grind on them, they get hot. And if they get hot and release that epoxy, you got to start over. We don't want to do that. So there's our rag. Let's see how this goes. Keep in mind, keep that brass cool because they will heat up. I'm going to change to a little different type of disc. This is a softer disc, and I like it because it bends a little bit with the contour of the knife. So that's a disc that'll move. Let's get them on there good and tight. Now this is going to cut really fast. See, I'm beginning to get where I can move again. Now, I'll go right on the handle, and I'm using caution to clamp and grab the metal spine of the knife and not the wood, because that'll make an impression that'll be very hard to get out. So again, with the water, staying cool, keeping the blade cool. So I'm beginning to get the thickness of the handles that I want on there. So now I'm going to start slowing way down. Moving frequently. Now I'm going to go to the other side. Now, remember, we just took the clamps all off, and we are already coming around to what looks like what could be a good knife handle shape. Now, looking at this handle, we're going to look at the spine, and we're going to see that this side handle is longer than this side handle. This one is a little longer right down in here. I'm going to leave that for now. That's a very tricky thing to do. I want to get my handle shaped, and then at the last I'm going to come back and trim that off just a little at a time, and then there's going to be a lot of hand sanding. So just so you know that, I know that's there, and if you can see that, that's really good. Hopefully you saw it before I stopped and said, hey, John, are you going to fix that? Well, yes, I'm going to. All right, now let's go back to here. And them pins cool down. Okay, now I'm going to do a little change up. We're going to change tools. It's important, if you're using tools, to know those tools and act appropriately when using those tools. So what we're going to do is plug this in, and it's going to come on, and it's going to turn into a flat sanding table for me. Like that. Now I've got some room to do a little shaping. Now, without too much trouble, you can see how that belt sander has taken that down really nice and really even and really quickly. So now we're just going to go to the mouse type, and I think I've got an 80 grit on, and once we get this done, I'm at the point where it's all hand sanding, and we are going to be ready to put finish on the other knife handle, the mate to this one. There's a big one and a small one. All right. There is one more thing I need to do with this knife and show you about this knife that is a mistake that's commonly made. But we're going to correct it. All right, so we'll go to the sledge block and we'll just start sanding. I'm going to use a cushion of some sort. In this case, it's just a glove. So far, since we've started, we've unclamped the clamps from the epoxied handle. We've taken the flap type disc and we've ground it down roughly. We then went to a more of an aggressive sanding type disc on the Milwaukee grinder. And then we've gone to the vibratory grinder and we went from great big, thick, fat handle sticking out, and literally in a few minutes, we've toned it down to what's coming along really, really well. So we're going to do a little more sanding, and the point I'm trying to get to is down the spine of this knife, you'll see dark colors, particularly right here. I want that to go away because that's epoxy. So we'll try and get that out of there. Okay, now I've got this handle where I'm fairly satisfied with the shape, how it's configured. I'm fairly satisfied with it. There's more things to do. The hanging hole needs to be routed out just a little bit. For that, I'll use the Dremel tool. I want to round the edges of the hanging hole so it's a little easier to use. As you can see, when I put water on the black walnut handle, it immediately darkens. Well, we're going to see that in detail in just a second. But what I wanted to see was, if we look carefully at the knife, and let's take my finger and follow along to the very tip. And then I'll draw a line with my finger as well to the very tip. And what do we see? We see a broken tip. Now, this being that buzzsaw steel and having been hardened, that became very brittle. And when I was putting the pins in, the long pins, the slightest bump, and I busted that tip off. Well, that's not good enough for a showpiece. But it's okay, because we're going to correct that right now. I'm going to put that in a vise, and I'm going to go to a durable flap type disc. In this case, it's the blue one, I think, and this is a 60 grit. This is a 60 grit one, which is fairly aggressive. So when you get in a little jam like this, there's no need to panic unless you're further along. All right, so we put our flap disc on, our 60 grit flap disc. Get it where it's supposed to be, like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind a little bit of the horn off of here, and I'm going to take that right out, and nobody will ever know except anybody who ever watches this video. So I'm comparing profiles, and that's pretty good. So one's the larger, one's the smaller. So that damaged tip, whatever spot was there that damaged, is now ground out and really good. Now this knife is ready for its final work, but we're already past that point on this knife, so we're going to go to this one. And all I really need to do here is block type sanding, and that I have right here. So once again, we're going to use a little cushion. The blade on this knife has been roughed down. It is not completely razor sharp yet, but it has been hollowed out and grooved down. And that, sharpening the knife is sharpening a knife. you're going to figure out how to do that. When it's sharp, it should cut really, really well. When it's dull, it's the opposite. My brilliant thing for the day. All right. So that's not bad at all. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. I use a product called tung oil varnish, and I happen to have that right here. You can use what you want. Some people just use butcher block polish, beeswax, various things. I like this, and so it's got a twist top here. We get it open like so, like that. Once again, using chemicals, stay away from fire, stay away from flames, things like that. Use your head. And we're just going to take the corner of a rag. I don't even need nearly this much. We'll fold it over a couple of times. And tung oil varnish is a rub-on and polish product. So I'm going to squirt it onto my little cloth here. And then we're going to put it directly on to the black walnut. And we get an almost, well, we get an immediate color change. And because that black walnut is approximately, it's been cut for 60 years. The tree is much, much older than that. A little more. It says in the directions to rub it in, wait 20 minutes or so, and then you can buff it to whatever shine you want, and then to wait 24 hours to put a second coat on. So, we're starting to see immediately the difference. And you can, the good thing about this is you can just take it right away and buff it up and let it polish. So both of these knives are going to look very, very, very much the same, only one bigger, one smaller. And that is how we make a Serbian knife. Serbian knife is used much like a cutting knife, a cutting tool, any other kind of knife. It also has the benefit of being used as a scoop or a spatula and moving your cooked products, cutting meat, cutting cooked products. This one a little smaller, much better for smaller handling. So there we have it. Now you should be able to make your own Serbian knife if you have a plasma cutter, a buzzsaw blade, and some leftover hardwoods. You can watch this video on YouTube, and if you do, always remember to say you liked it. I'm John from Hughes's Ford, and this is how you do a Serbian knife. There's our rag. Let's see how this goes. Whoop. One thing for sure we're going to have to do is plug this cord in. Pretty good chance that's going to get edited.